Hi everyone, it's Catherine, and today I am going to be going over the basics introductory to English paper piecing, which is quilting using paper and glue basting. You can also thread baste, and I'm showing you a couple blocks that could be constructed using this method. So currently I am working on Tula Pink's bloomers pattern, and I have the whole first row completed. I actually started this project in 2024, but have since taken a break and now restarted it. So it's definitely something you can walk away from. And then some of the tools that you may need to use when doing English paper piecing would be fabric of choice. It could be something with a pattern, a rotary cutter, some glue sticks, a marking tool, potentially some Sewline magnet clips, some needles. I like the number 10 needles. I show the Tulip brand and the Jen Kingwell brand. Some clips. You can use an Elmer's glue stick instead of Sewline. It's just a little thicker and takes a little longer to dry. Some thread colors in various colors depending on what fabric you're using. You're going to want to try and closely match whatever the lighter fabric is typically, or the darker fabric. You're going to pick one of those. Acrylic templates are nice to have, but you can make this completely using the paper pieces, and you're just going to cut slightly larger than the paper pieces. So 1/4 of an inch or 3/4 of an inch, whatever your desired amount of fabric to have to fold over the back of the material. So I'm going to show you how to use the marking pen with the acrylic template, but if you were using papers, you're just going to mark out slightly larger than the paper as your template. And with English paper piecing, there is a lot of fabric that is wasted. So sometimes marking out, especially when you're not fussy cutting, which means zeroing in on a specific design in the fabric, would be easier to mark out. So I'm using serrated scissors, which actually like bite down and hold the fabric in place a lot better than regular scissors. I was trying to show that there in the camera. Or you could use a rotary blade with the template and trace it out that way, or you could just roughly follow your lines, because we have a really large seam allowance with this. I think my templates have 3/4 of an inch seam allowance built in, and that's a lot of extra fabric on the back side. So even if your pieces fall slightly short, it will still work. So fussy cutting would be like, I want to cut this panda head, which I'm not actually cutting it since I don't need to. I'm going to take my template or my paper and see where it would fall so that I get the pattern or the image that I want, and then I would either take my marking tool and trace it and cut with scissors, or I could use my rotary blade. So to baste, you're just going to take your glue stick and go on the edge of the paper and fold your fabric taut but not stretching. So with Elmer's, it's a little more glue that comes out, and it does take a little longer to dry because it's slightly thicker. So it is an affordable option, which I do use in emergencies. I do just prefer the Sewline. I tend to feel like I can baste faster with the Sewline, but it's definitely user's choice. So as far as sewing these pieces together, you're going to just hit the edges of the joining area so you barely go through the paper. This takes a little bit of practice, but I am showing that you could use the magnetic clips or a standard clip, or you could just use your hands and hold it in place. So I'm using black Aurifil 40 weight here, but you could use 50 weight, and I'm just going over barely the top bits of the joining area of the fabric, because sometimes you can see little nip bits of your sewing, but that's okay, because you know what? Who's looking that closely at our project other than if we're entering them into a quilt show? And I generally like to have my stitches pretty close together just because it keeps the fabric tighter and I won't have any potential gaps later on. And when I get to the end of my piece, I double knot it and then I just cut it. So I'm going to show you another angle of the sewing of the joining pieces. And this is a project you could take with you on the road, at the pool side, if you're taking a break from swimming, in a doctor's office, at an airport. I recently did sew poolside, that block that is to the right of the camera. And just taking your time and being patient with yourself, since this was a skill I was definitely nervous about learning in the beginning. Sometimes the thread does get caught, and it's just something you're going to have to work through. But patience is key. So a first project that I would recommend starting with was just a simple hexagon quilt where you don't mind fussy cutting. You just cut fabric and you practice the skill and you work through a small block similar to those smaller blocks that I showed in the beginning of the video. And to join to a larger project, you're just going to follow those same steps, flipping, and don't forget that you can fold paper, and once a paper is completely enclosed, you can pop it out, meaning it's been sewn on all the sides. Thank you. See you in the next one.